Part 5. Visions, Dreams and Voices. I have selected a few personal experiences taken from two journals which are dated November 1983 to July 1987. Everything that I have written here is truthful and accurate to the experiences that I received at the time. It was written immediately after or during the experience and was written without any exaggeration. The voices and conversations that took place are as close as possible to what was said and thought at the time. In a vision, I saw a great legion of white horses, moving toward me, and they that sat on the horses were dressed in white, from head to foot, with swords drawn in hand. And as I stood there, I spoke, and they moved to the right. And again I spoke, and they moved to the left. And when I did not speak, they ceased to move, for they moved according to the sound of my voice. In a vision, I saw standing a white chariot, and the person standing on the chariot was dressed in white from head to foot. Two horses in front, side by side, were also pure white. And as I watched, the chariot moved forward, very, very fast. So fast, its speed was terrible, and this terror filled my body. In a night vision, I saw 6 or 7 or more, dressed in white from head to foot, standing quietly in the clouds facing me, and I understood them to be the angels that control the winds, and the rain, and all the weather conditions of the earth. I wondered at old people, and I thought, why do people grow old? For I could not think of a good reason. I then heard a voice which said, "Peter, do you want to know why they grow old? Do you want to know why I made them grow old?" And then I heard a voice which said, "It's because they would not believe they're dead." And then I heard a voice which said, "They won't believe you, Peter." I heard a voice which said, "There's something wrong with everyone, Peter." My first vision. This vision, which was received many years ago, still remains very clear in my mind. It was accompanied by strange sounds and a presence within me which, after receiving it, I was unable to get out of bed for a number of days, for the experience seemed to drain all energy out of my body. The sounds and presence continued over a period of time, filling and occupying my body and thoughts throughout each day and night. Since that moment, most nights have been interrupted several times, sleep being replaced by night visions in dreams. This first vision was received after I had set my heart to do all things that I believed would please the Lord God. I examined myself for every thought and action. I abstained from eating animal flesh and products and drank only water. I began to sell and give all that I had to the poor, and I steered my desires away from material things, giving no thought to sexual or worldly comforts. Within this vision, which was very clear and vivid, I was standing with my brother close to the ocean. As we were talking, I looked out to sea and noticed a very large wave which was heading towards us, and pointing at it I told my brother, and we both ran for safety. However, we failed to make an escape, for this large wave came upon us very quickly, and we were held with many other people within its wall of water. Looking around, I saw many people struggling within the face of this wave, as it headed inland up a river. I found it very difficult to move, but with great effort, and being close to the edge of this wave, I managed to take hold of the bank of the river, and with all my strength I pulled myself out of the wave. Standing up, I was amazed that my body and clothes were completely dry, for the water of the wave had not wet me, but more so there was a great peace and calm which filled my body and thoughts, and the strangeness of the land I was standing on made me greatly wonder. It seemed to be a plain without any trees or horizon, which directed my thoughts to be totally occupied by its strangeness. I walked away from the river a few paces and noticed a wooden stand, onto which had been placed a horn, being about the length of a man's forearm. With curiosity I walked towards the stand, and after examining the horn I slowly picked it up and put it to my lips. Then suddenly, the strangest thing happened, for a string of musical notes sounded without me having to open my mouth to blow. I withdrew the horn from my lips, and immediately the musical note stopped. I wondered how a horn could sound without me having to blow into it, and the musical notes were of a type I had never heard before, and they seemed to occupy the whole place, for the sound seemed not to come from any one direction. I again placed the horn to my closed lips, and immediately, without blowing, the musical notes came forth. I pulled the horn from my lips, and immediately the sound ceased. Then suddenly, to my surprise, another horn sounded, as if in answer to the horn I was holding. I turned around, and at some distance, standing on the other side of the river, stood two men with their right arms raised, waving at me. These men were both dressed in long white garments which hung from their shoulders to their feet. They both had shoulder-length white hair and large white beards. I again placed the horn to my lips, and it sounded, and after removing it, a string of similar notes answered from a horn across the river. The horns seemed to be talking to each other, and I continued to make it sound and listen for an answer until my curiosity was satisfied. I then turned my attention to the river, and walking towards it, I put the horn to my closed mouth, and immediately a string of notes came forth, and all the people who were with me when I was trapped within the wall of the wave slowly began to lift themselves out of the river. One by one, they came forth and quietly stood in front of me, all being completely dry as I was. When all that were in the river had raised themselves out of the river and were quietly standing in front of me facing me, I turned and led them inland, and they all quietly followed me. We walked for some distance and finally came to a small hill onto which had grown a very large tree with many branches and leaves. A few paces from this tree was a dark cave which went down into the hill, and I straightway told everyone not to go near or into the cave, for there lied a great danger within its depths. They all listened to me, and we turned our attention to the large tree. I produced a cane basket and told them to fill the basket up with all the fruit that had fallen from the tree, for there was much fruit lying around the foot of the tree. This fruit was similar in looks to that of an apple, and all the people with me quietly began to pick up this fruit and place it into the basket, which was filled when all the fruit had been picked up. Now when our labor had been completed, all the people stood quietly facing me as they handed me the basket of fruit which I had instructed them to fill. However, I was in doubt as to what I should do with this basket of fruit, but felt that it should be taken to the very top of the hill for a reason I knew not. There was a pathway which led to the top of the hill, and I began to walk up it carrying the basket of fruit. After some distance up the hill, I met a very tall man who was also headed up the hill. I told him I had to take the basket of fruit up the hill, and he said he was also headed up the hill and would be glad to take it up to the top of the hill for me. I thanked him and gave him the basket of fruit, and he went up the hill as I turned and headed back down to experience earthly things before I awoke on my bed. As if all energy had been drained out of me, I was unable to move from my bed. My room was filled with a strange sound, like that of gushing water, rushing wind, or a great many people speaking at the same time. This sound seemed to fill my body, and I could feel its presence, like that of a mild vibration or electric shock within my chest. When this sound ceased, I heard the sound of the horn, as it were talking to me. The strange sound of its musical notes filled my bedroom, and it seemed to put visions within my mind. After some days I managed to get out of bed, and sitting in my lounge room I found I could answer the horn with my thoughts, for I could clearly hear the sound of the horn talking to me and putting visions in my mind even though I was fully awake. And I found I was able to answer it by concentrating my thoughts into visions, which produced the sound of the string of notes of the horn. In this way the visions were established. Peter Bowler. Sunday, the 9th of May 2010.